One of the reasons there is so much interest in the presidency and in our next commander-in-chief has to do with stories that literally involve life and death. For example, 9 years ago in Iran, a CIA consultant went missing. His name, Robert Levinson. Let's listen now to his daughter, Susan Levinson Booth.
I always told my dad, who I lovingly call Pops, that he is my favorite person in the world. These past 9 years without having him in my life has been devastating to me and my family.
Robert Levinson was captured off the coast of Iran while working as a CIA consultant, reportedly trying to recruit an informant for the agency. He was last seen alive 5 years ago in this video as a hostage pleading for assistance.
33 years of service to the United States deserves something. Please help me.
And tonight, and for so long, Levinson's whereabouts remain unknown. Let's discuss this now with someone who's been following this story, investigative reporter for the New York Times, Barry Meier, a Pulitzer Prize finalist and two-time winner of the George Polk Award, and he is the author of the newly released book, Missing Man, The American Spy Who Vanished in Iran. Barry, we very much appreciate your time tonight on Newsmax Prime as you join us from Newsmax, New York. Just got to ask you straight out, do you think Mr. Levinson is still alive?
Well, JD, first of all, thanks very much for having me on. You know, as you mentioned, it's been more than 5 years since we've seen any proof of life that Bob is still with us. I certainly hope he is, but, you know, with each day that goes by, it's very hard to maintain that faith.
You know, for a long time, and you covered this, the facts behind his disappearance, well, they were held secret. Some even put out the story that he was a rogue agent who was captured. Who at the CIA do we know green-lighted his mission to Iran?
Well, there's actually no evidence that his mission to Iran was green-lighted. Bob really took that on himself. What there is mounds of evidence to show is that the CIA, a group of analysts within the CIA, encouraged Bob to collect information about Iran. They essentially asked him to work as a rogue agent, to work as a rogue spy, and he traveled around the world. He went to Istanbul, he went to Europe, he went to Canada to collect this information.
Bottom line, what motivated Bob Levinson to do this, in your opinion?
Bob was a great guy. You know, he was a career FBI agent. After the FBI, he went to work as a private investigator, and more than anything else, Bob wanted to get back into the game. He loved working for the government. He loved working as an agent. He caught on with the CIA as a part-time consultant, and more than anything else, he wanted that job to expand. He wanted to have a bigger role at the CIA, and he thought that, you know, bringing in a big informant in Iran for the CIA was the way to do that.
Well, as I understand it, when it comes to the whole subject of informants, apparently some of Levinson's colleagues tried to help the FBI find him by recruiting a former Iranian general to seek information about Bob's whereabouts, but they were hindered. Now, the CIA is in a touchy situation in terms of intelligence. Is it too strong a term to say his disappearance has been covered up by the agency?
Well, you know, JD, I don't think that's a strong term at all. I think, you know, the CIA has acted shamefully in this episode. I would say the same for many in the U.S. government. You know, Bob was a servant. Bob was a dedicated agent. He devoted his life to working for the U.S. government. And at the very least, this government owed his family the duty of being forthright and honest and doing everything they could to bring him back home to be with his family.
The calls are coming in at 1-877-NEWSMAX. Let's go to Newcastle, Ohio, with Jim. Jim, you're with JD and with Barry Meier. Welcome.
Okay, JD, I've got one thing to say about that Iran situation. Is Obama or his henchman there should have insisted that Iran return this man before they went any farther with negotiating with them.
Well, that is an excellent point. Let's turn to Barry on this. With all the negotiations over the nuclear deal with Iran, is there any evidence that Secretary Kerry or President Obama or anyone took a demand of the release of Bob Levinson as a condition to get a deal with the Iranian regime?
Both President Obama and Secretary Kerry have made it clear that neither Bob nor the Americans that were held in prison in Tehran were part of the nuclear deal with Iran. They were, taken off the table. There were negotiations that were going on separately, and after that deal was finalized, to free those Americans that were in prison. But Bob was never brought up in terms of, what do we know about Bob? The Iranians claim they knew nothing about him. And unfortunately, the Obama administration allowed the Iranian government to sort of broadcast what really people in the U.S. government know to be a lie.
Well, the Secretary of State discussed Bob Levinson's capture with Wolf Blitzer on CNN a few months ago, insisting that this administration has not abandoned Bob. Let's look and listen to what Secretary Kerry had to say.
Bob Levinson is very, very much a part of our negotiation, very much part of every conversation we have had with the Iranians. He is, in fact, in the agreement itself, specifically by name and process going forward. The Iranians have agreed to continue to help us try to find the whereabouts, whatever may or may not have happened to Bob Levinson. We are going to continue that effort.
Was Secretary Kerry telling the truth right there?
Well, those are very fine words, and I commend Secretary Kerry for saying them. However, neither he nor anyone else in the U.S. government has stated the obvious, and that is that Bob Levinson was in Iran to collect information for the Central Intelligence Agency. And I believe until they make that public admission, nothing will happen in his case. His case will not be brought to a resolution, and they owe it to his family to do him the honor of stating the obvious.
Less than 2 minutes remain in the segment. Back to the telephone from Union, New Jersey. Sophia is on the line. Sophia, what's on your mind?
Well, the government should really be helping them, but if they won't even call the radical jihadists what they are, you have to name your enemy in order to work on the problem. And I feel sorry for those poor people, and I think our government and our president and vice president should be ashamed of themselves.
Sophia, we thank you for the call. Obviously, diplomacy is a delicate business, but there reaches a point in negotiations where you have to have a quid pro quo. This was not a priority for the administration. 30 seconds for you, Barry.
Well, JD, in my book, I lay out a mound of evidence that points to the fact that top-ranking Iranian officials were likely involved in Bob's capture, his detention, and possibly his death. And it is really incumbent upon the United States government to get those people's names out there. They're in my book. There's no reason why our government shouldn't be broadcasting their name, because we as a country are going to be doing business with these people, and Americans and American businessmen and our diplomats should know who they are.
Barry Meier, the author of the new book, Missing Man, The American Spy Who Vanished in Iran, joining us tonight from Newsmax, New York. It's a compelling read, and Barry shared that compelling story. Thank you so much, Barry. Now, when we come back, there is more to talk about involving Iran. We will do so with Colonel Derek Harvey. A lot of other topics of interest, too. Stay with us. We'll be right back.